this notching on the backside.
A number of years ago, I was asked to speak to a group of guys. These were good guys. They needed a manhood wheel alignment. And what I'd put together was a message that spoke about the journey that every man needs to go through, how we move from boyhood through adolescence to manhood, and then gave them a vision beyond. And I was on top of a platform as I spoke that had steps leading down to where the guys were, so I got down on the floor where they were, and as I gave the message, I started stepping up to boyhood, and then beyond to adolescence, and to manhood. It was interesting, those guys began to get it. They began to sit up a little straighter, their jaws began to set, their chest came out. They were encouraged. But I looked those guys in the eye and said, it's time to step up, because if you don't step up, you're gonna fall down. You guys ready?
So Grace and I have got 5 kids, 3 boys, 2 girls, and for me and for us, it's really cultivating both tough and tender. And I think boys that you want to grow into good men, they need to be both. They need to be tough. They need to know when to stand up to the bully, to protect those who are in danger. So we want the boys to defend and love and protect. We also want them to be tender. We want them to be affectionate and kind. We don't want the boys to be the bullies. We want them to be the ones who are up against the bullies. So yeah, we're always working on both of those with the boys, sometimes tough, sometimes tender. And for boys, they have a hard time being discerning. So sometimes boys are always tough. Well, then they're wrestling with their sister and hurting her and sassing their mom. Or they're always tender, which means they're really nice and they do well in school and church and home, but they get on the sports field or they get out in the real world with the other boys and they're in serious trouble. So it's trying to teach them to be both tough and tender. And sometimes that's just life examples. A story comes to mind. My son, Zach, when he was younger, there was a boy over at our house. Family was over. And the older boy was picking on his little sister. And so he told the boy on a few occasions, if you keep picking on my sister, I'm going to make you stop. He's going to hit him. And the boy didn't stop and was hurting his little sister. So he walled off and hit this kid to make him stop hurting his little sister. And then the boy comes running and crying in the room and whining, oh my gosh, Zach hit me. And I'm thinking, oh boy, the pastor's kid just cracked somebody. But I knew Zach, and he wasn't normally like that. And so I asked him, I said, did you hit that boy? He said, yes, I did. And I asked, why? Zach started crying. He said, he kept hurting my sister, and I told him to stop, and I told him if he wouldn't stop, I'd make him stop. And so the parent, as I remember the story, looked at me and said, so what are you going to do now? I said, I'm going to get him some ice cream. Because that's the right thing to do. As a dad, you've got to make yourself available to be there so that you can say, pull them aside. Kind of like a coach in the middle of a game and say, okay, you did this, you should have done that. I'm going to send you back in there. You need to do it different this time. And in that way, a dad's kind of a bit of a coach as the game of life is going on.
Every boy needs and yearns for and loves his dad regardless of the circumstances. And it took a while for me to realize that things were out of whack. It took a while for me to realize that my father wasn't there and that I really spent very little time with my father. My mother was a strict disciplinarian. People ask me all the time, how'd you grow up in drug-infested, gang-infested South Central Los Angeles, really during the time of, when crack cocaine and gang violence and everything else. How'd you grow up in that and not end up in that world? And my honest answer is because I feared Francis Bauckham more than any gangster in the street. I was more afraid of my mother than anybody else. And in fact, they were as well. When I was old enough to run into a little trouble, we got on a Greyhound bus and went from Los Angeles, California to Beaufort, South Carolina over a 2.5 or 3 day bus ride. And I spent a year or so with her oldest brother, my uncle, who was a retired drill instructor in the Marine Corps. And I got out of trouble in a hurry. But it was amazing to spend a year with a man in the house. You know, my uncle had learned how to train dogs in the military. Of course, he learned how to train men in the military as well. We did manly things together. And he bought me a rifle, a pellet gun. I went hunting and fishing, and he was a scuba diver, and it was like living with G.I. Joe. I saw masculinity. I saw a man who lived with his wife. I saw a man be married. I saw a man lead. I mean, all of those things that I just had not seen before.
When I was about 8 years old, I had a paper route where I had this bicycle, and I would put my papers that were given to me into my little basket and go around the neighborhood and make sure they were delivered on time. I did that 5 days a week. And I remember on this one particular day, it was windy, and this big, huge gust of wind came up and knocked me off my bike and spread my papers all over the place. They just blew away. Oh man, what am I gonna do now? Either pick them up, it would take hours, getting dark. So I just looked at it and I said, forget it, I'm going home. I didn't even think about what the right thing to do was. So I got home, and one of the things I wanted to do was get through the living room as quickly as possible because I knew my dad would be sitting there and I didn't want him asking any questions. I didn't make it. My dad lowered his paper and said, "Son, home early from your paper route, aren't you?" And I knew that I had to tell him what happened, and so I explained that I'd lost all these papers. He pointed at me, he said, "Car, 5 minutes." And so I was in the car in 5 minutes. We drove up to the very place where I had fallen over. He said, "Out of the car." We got out of the car and walked up to this front door. And he knocked on it, and this gentleman answered, about his age. And to my astonishment, as we walked into the living room, there was a living room full of papers, pages all disorganized and probably up to about my knees. So it was pretty clear what we were going to do. So between that man, my dad, and I, we sat down, probably took about an hour and a half and pieced those newspapers back together, page by page, gathered them up. Dad got me back in the car and he chauffeured me around and I finished my paper route. That was a lesson that stuck with me. A lesson that my dad wanted to teach me, that you just don't quit when you have a job, when you have a responsibility. Men don't quit. And it served me well. It's served me well in the ministry that I've been in, the job that I've had, my marriage, my raising my kids who have learned this lesson as well. And I'm glad he took the time to do it.
When I think about adolescence, you think about climbing a mountain with your children. The peak of the mountain is releasing them into godly adulthood. And there are so many parents who, when they get to that point of the climb, they go back down and they let their kids climb free. And that's the point of life, that your children need you more than they've ever needed you before. The sons and daughters need their father more involved, closer, walking with them through the difficult decisions that they have to make on everything from dating to morality to politics to sports to spirituality, you name it. That's a time to be closer than ever before.
It's time to recognize another inductee into the Unmanly Hall of Fame.
Private. We're danger close.
I'm not gonna make it.
It's time to get out of here. Air support's gonna light this place up like the 4th of July.
Go on without me.
Fight together, die together. Jeez, Mom, what?
How's my brave little soldier? I made your favorite.
Can I have some juice?
Of course, anything for my brave little man.
Congratulations, Frank Masterson, for successfully slowing down time so that as your body continues to age, you remain forever 13. We salute you as the newest member of the Unmanly Hall of Fame.
I have gotten on a flight in a first-class cabin on an airplane in Washington, D.C., flew to Los Angeles and sat next to a well-dressed, successful guy who played a video game the entire time. Now, it's a free country. You can do whatever you want. But there's got to be a better use of your time than that. I would think sleeping would be a better use of your time. Reading would be a better use of your time. Maybe even drinking would be a better use of your time. I don't know. But there's got to be a better use of your time. And it has a kind of hold and hypnotic fix on people. And the reason I bring it up is because it's so widespread, and I think it's kind of the latest narcotic and the latest way to avoid serious responsibility, which is what really defines a man at the end of the day, is the taking of responsibility.
When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man,
when I became a man, when I became a man, when I became a man,
I gave up childish ways.
Childish ways, childish ways, childish ways.
You know, there was a day that you would move from boy to man, and there was some indication of when that was. Now we don't know. Is it when you hit puberty, or you can drive, or you graduate, or you start college, or you can drink, or you get married, or you become a father? People don't know. And the result is then you got a bunch of, biological adults, but emotional children. I call them boys who can shave.
A guy in Philadelphia on a sports page put it very well. He said if 60's the new 40, maybe 25's the new 13.
Now even secular sociology and psychiatry are extending adolescence from 18 through to about 24 years of age, because they recognize that people have never had to bear any responsibility. Everything was given to them. Entertainment at their fingertips, fast food, you name it. Nothing is worked for. Everything is given. And I think that it's creating people that are physically mature, but emotionally, socially, even intellectually, they're kind of just little still.
The result is today you've got guys who are massive porn heads. They tend to, live apart from their parents and then rebound back when things get hard. The Bible says to leave your mother and father. They tend to be looking for, girlfriends and good times, not good legacy in marriage. And they're consumers, not producers. So it's food and it's sex and it's drugs and it's alcohol and it's video games and it's entertainment. And there's no production, there's no life and growth and help and hope and healing for others. It's incredibly narcissistic. And then you've got women who are going to college and the workforce. So now you've got, for the first time in the nation's history, more women working than men and more women in college than men. And for those women who are Christian, they're saying, I wouldn't mind getting married to a guy with whom I could make babies, but I don't want to get married to a baby. And so they're just choosing to remain single, and you've really got a cultural turn that's very concerning.
He's got his own by himself at the 20, at the 10, he falls down.
Hey, this is Chris. Leave me a message.
Chris, this is Dad. Call me when you get this, it's important.
This is Chris. Leave me a message.
So what do you want me to do?
I want you to go to that stupid bar and bring him home.
Honey, he's 26 years old.
Yeah, he needs to start acting like it.
Honey, it's 10:30.
If Chris is late again, Fred will fire him. And if that happens again, I'm gonna move. I don't know what y'all gonna do. I'm gonna move. There's a nice trailer park down the road and I will be gone.
All right. Okay. I'll go down there.
Dad, what are you doing here? Jimmy, give my dad a beer, will ya?
Your mom asked me to come down and bring you home.
Sorry, I kind of have a game to finish.
Fred called and he wants you at the shop by 7.
Yeah, good thing he called. But it's kind of a big game.
How much?
Hey, it's your shop.
400.
Dollars?
More than I can lose. It's a good thing I don't have to worry about that. Eight ball, corner pocket. Cool as you like. All right, I'm fine. Who's doing shots? I guess you quit the shop and go pro. Come on, celebrate with me. One drink.
I got a drink right here.
That does not count. One shot. It's only my second on the night. I'm still gonna have to drive my old man home. There we go. Jimmy, 2 shots, please.
You know I can still whip you at this game. It's been a long time since I've done this.
That's how you grow old, Dad. To victory.
All right, one more game. This time it's doubles.
I hope Keith doesn't think he's gonna win his money back. My dad's better at this game than I am.
All right, 25 per, 100 in the pot.
Easy money. But the way you've been playing, I can understand, but we gotta go.
You heard the man. 50 per person or it's not worth our time.
Okay, sounds like a deal.
I'm counting on you now.
All right. Give me a tight rack. I got break. Just don't tell your mother.
I think most of those guys are not happy with where their lives are. In fact, that's been my experience 100% of the conversations I've had with guys, where when I'm sitting across the table with them and they're beginning to tell me about their lives, they're not proud that they're living with their mom and dad. They're not excited that they've mastered Modern Warfare 3. They're not proud of those things. There's a sense of shame in that. And so I think if you mock that openly and you attack that openly, what ends up happening is you send them further into their shame. So you point it out, but you point it out as a diagnostic, and then you list the cure.
The reason why we have 30, 40, 50-year-old adolescents, it's a pretty obvious but sad answer. It's been the breakdown of the family over the last 35, 40 years. With the rise of the divorce rate and the increased feminization of men, what we're finding is a reticence of men to step up and to step out. You see, manhood is imprinted. A woman every 28 days is powerfully, graphically reminded of who she is. A man only knows he's a man when his father or significant male role model tells him so. When you remove the visual role model, you remove the composite picture of what a man should be, you're left with a legacy of confusion and of complexity and of uncertainty, and that is indeed what we have today. It's the households. That's where the problem is. You know, we got problems with leaders out there in the public square because we have problems in the homes.
I think there is a season of adolescence, but I think even in that season of adolescence, there should be expectations, there should be the execution of those expectations, and there should be discipline in place for the failure to meet those expectations.
One of the reasons I think that adolescence is perpetuated is because we don't let our children bear the weight of responsibility. And people just are not, people are so entitled, and everyone believes that they deserve the American way, and they want things given to them that previous generations understood you have to work for. And I think this goes on in the church. I think this goes on in the marketplace. I don't think it's unique to us. I think it's everywhere.
There's no real markers for a young man that says, at this point in my life, this is the expectation on me, and at this point, this is the expectation on me. There's no rites of passage really in our culture. There's no high expectation on our young men that they do this or they become this. And so I think really the role of the church is to step in and say, oh, no. That this is what's expected and this is what we're called to, and to be real honest about, and this can be difficult.
You know, if I was sitting across the table with a 28-year-old who was stuck, and he's paralyzed because he's scared to death, he doesn't know what to do and this kind of thing, I would do two almost paradoxical things. On one hand, I would let him know that he is unconditionally loved, that he is cared for, that he is not alone, that he's not the first person in the world that was ever stuck. And the second thing that I would do would be to force him to clarify his future. I would help him to objectify where he needs to be and keep asking him as my arm is around him, so what are you going to do? We just got to flat out get in the grill and in the eyeballs of these 30, 40-year-olds and say, you need to get up off your backside, kick it in gear. I'm not going to let you go. I'm going to help you. Responsibility is not going to kill you. To stand alone is going to strengthen you. It's not going to destroy you, and help them to get over that hump.
First time I ever held a gun, it was in somebody's house that had a bed full of guns. I was 10 years old.
At 15 years old, I went from being debate captain, youth president, to being homeless.
I started smoking weed when I was about 12 years old. That kind of just led into the kind of people that I hung around.
I never got into a gang. I kind of just affiliated, hung out with them.
People join gangs because they feel like that's the only way.
Like, that's the only hope for them in life? I was never happy. I dreaded meeting up with those guys, but those were the only people that I had in my corner. When your family is more of a problem to be around than the gang, and the gang gets you clothes, and the gang gets you food, and the gang exhibits everything that makes sense as loyalty, but the people that supposedly love you, or at least supposed to, don't do those things, then where are you gonna be when you're all alone?
When I was 19, I thought being a man was just, nobody could tell me nothing.
A man gets women. The man is tough. The man never cries. The man doesn't show weakness. The man will sell drugs.
You know, I learned a lot about, selling drugs and stuff. And of course, I did drugs.
We could get drunk and we would fight each other. We'd go from fighting other people to fighting each other, seeing who's tougher, who's meaner, who's in control. It was chaos.
There's been some incidents, though, where we've had actually friends have gotten killed. It got so bad that actually I started living out of my car. I would spend all my money on drugs and eat one cheeseburger from McDonald's a day, and that was it.
I met a girl, I got her pregnant on the very first night I hung out with her. The kid's mom disappears one day. She drops the baby off at my work. I lost my job. And now here's the baby back. There's no car, there's no job, there's no cell phone, there's no family.
I was broke, I was strung out, didn't have any money, didn't have any drugs, didn't have any friends because I didn't have any money or drugs anymore. I remember looking at myself in the mirror just one night, saying, what happened?
My daughter suffers every day. She wants her mom and dad to be together. I still can't explain to her why she's in the situation that she is. She's paying for her father's sins. Nothing I thought I could do changed that.
Man, it was really about trying to make myself feel good and get people to like me, And I kind of take that also from not having a father. I noticed, I don't want my son to be without one. So it's just, that's really what I put it down into. That's all being a man of God all together in one.
When you get young men who grow up without fathers, they either, overcompensate, and that overcompensation can look like violence or promiscuity, or there's, the reverse of that, which is to be feminized. And so mine generally came out in forms of violence and promiscuity.
He was always pushing us to start our own ventures. And that was a big part of his conception of what it meant to be a man, that you went out and you created and you did, and you wanted to be the head and not the tail. The idea for him was, don't wait for someone else to come along and create something that you can be a part of. You go out and create something.
We were focused on getting them to sense that God had a purpose for their lives, that purpose was going to become clear as they got older and as they identified their gifts and their what I call their delights.
We've always had a culture in this family of making it exciting, making it desirable to grow up.
My parents really made it clear that the teen years were a time when I could accomplish something important. I mean, I could make a difference in the world, and that was a lot because my dad was such a visionary man. Every problem, every situation, he had an idea.
What we would try to do is create an environment in which our children were able to develop interests, and then we would feed those interests. I call these delights. The Bible says, greater the works of the Lord, they are pondered by all who delight in them. So when we would notice that our children were developing an ongoing interest in something, that we would begin to put kindling on that flame.
The interesting thing about it for my own experience and the way my dad encouraged me is he was never so much concerned with the exact thing I was doing. What he was concerned with was that I was doing something.
For me, the things that my parents invested into my life, because I had had all that foundation, particularly with the music, then when the opportunities came along, I was actually able to use it in meaningful ways. And then that kind of, brought a whole different dimension to it.
It was fun to make a difference. And because of that, the fun that I had was following in my dad's footsteps, following in my older siblings' footsteps, and trying to prove myself capable of joining them in the good work that they were doing.
If you give a young person something wonderful that they look forward to getting up for, they become productive in a way that is for their own sake.
There's a certain responsibility that you either have to choose to pick up or you can choose to ignore as long as possible.
And that's what it means to be a man, is to take that responsibility seriously, to be a steward of those responsibilities, to see responsibility not just as a burden, but as a blessing and a calling, and then to be faithful in those roles.
It's always been a very poignant realization for us that this time in our lives is vital to making us who we want to be.
God has a call in your life. You're going somewhere, and wherever that is, you need to be preparing for that now, not a week from now, a month from now, 10 years from now, today.
Children are a gift from the Lord, and that the fruit of the womb is a reward, and that they are like arrows in the hand of a warrior. Well, that phrase became the kind of the banner over our strategy, that our children were as arrows and that we should aim them intentionally. I understood that to mean as at targets that were significant or strategic in God's purposes. And so I use the analogy that they're like fire arrows. You aim them into an area of life and hope that they'll spread a flame for the glory of God.